Sturgis 2026 looked familiar on the live streams. Harleys everywhere, burnout pits, concerts, cameras glued to Main Street. Under all that noise, one quiet move slipped past almost everyone, and it could matter more than any burnout show you have ever watched. Indian motorcycles, silent Sturgis Snub. No big factory stage, no dramatic unveil, almost no visible corporate push at the biggest rally in the country. That silence was not an oversight, and it was not just a weak marketing call, it was a signal. In this video, we are going to follow the trail from that snub through dealer allocation sheets, supplier schedules, warranty planning, and early resale numbers. So watch till the end, because the consequences land in your garage, not on Main Street. Quiet gamble. Indian did not forget Sturgis. They skipped it on purpose. Regional sales managers talk about allocation memos that landed weeks before the rally. Those memos did not mention booths or stunt shows. They talked about units, trim levels, and timing. Certain models were pushed toward late summer. Others were held for fall delivery. Dealers who usually plan special Sturgis runs were told to cool their expectations. Instead of loading trucks for the Black Hills, they were told to plan for steady floor traffic back home. That is not what you do when you are chasing headlines. That is what you do when you care more about clean launches and clean books. Old writers know the difference between noise and intent. When a factory wants the spotlight, you see teaser photos, leaked part numbers, dramatic countdowns. None of that showed up. What did show up were quiet instructions to protect margin and manage supply. That is operational control, not confusion. Silence in this business is rarely an accident. When nothing flashy appears on the midway, but pallets still move on schedule, you are looking at a choice. Indian seems willing to let others fight for attention while they protect their own house. That will not excite the rally crowd, but it will matter to the man who buys and keeps his machine for 10 years. If you watched Sturgis and thought Indian disappeared, look closer at what dealers were told to do instead. Dealer signals. In the weeks leading into Sturgis, ordering behavior changed. Longtime dealers who normally begged for extra rally stock pulled back. They did not want to sit on metal built for one loud weekend. Instead, they asked for staggered deliveries and more balance between trims. Several dealer reports, shared quietly among sales managers, showed shortened early order windows. Big one-time dumps were replaced by phased shipments over several months. That move takes pressure off sales staff. It trades move everything by Labor Day for sell steadily all year. For riders, that matters more than a tent at Sturgis. A store that is not buried in desperate rally leftovers can afford to spend time fitting you to the right bike. They can keep a proper demo unit ready instead of stripping it for a quick sale. They can hold a fair line on price without playing games. Dealers are not sentimental. They follow cash flow. If they believed skipping the spotlight would hurt them, they would push back hard. Instead, most accepted the new pattern. Some even welcomed it. One veteran manager reportedly said he would rather have predictable shipments than another year of feast and famine around one party. When dealers start acting like that before the public even hears a story, you can bet the plan has been explained to them in language they understand. Those order sheets forced others in the chain to adjust their calendars. If you value straight talk on where the big touring brands are really headed, hit like, subscribe so you do not miss the next breakdown, and tell me in the comments what you are seeing at your local dealers today. Vendor clues. Suppliers feel every change before you ever see a showroom. Two major component vendors quietly revised their lead times that same quarter. Their booking windows shifted to match those phased dealer orders. That means fewer last-minute rush jobs and fewer production spikes followed by dead periods. In plain terms, the assembly lines get to breathe. When a factory does not have to slam on the gas for a single event, quality usually improves. Workers see the same frame, the same brackets, the same harnesses day after day. Mistakes drop. Warranty claims follow. For older riders who keep a bike long, pass the payment book. That is more important than any burnout contest. Supplier notes also hinted at more conservative safety stock levels on critical parts. Instead of gambling everything on one massive Sturgis wave, Indian appears to be building a cushion that keeps parts flowing to dealers all year. That helps the service desk, not the marketing team. Ask any mechanic who has ever waited 3 months for a simple bracket. A smooth pipeline is worth more than a flashy reveal. When your bike is down in July and the part appears in days, you remember that. When it takes an entire season, you remember that even longer. If you want to know how serious a company is, do not stare at the stage. Look at how their suppliers book time and protect inventory. Those backstage adjustments usually show up later in the metal you actually ride, the real roadmap. The model road ahead tells you everything about the intent behind the silence. Internal sourcing plans point toward practical upgrades, not circus tricks. Parts commonality is going up across the heavy touring line. Brackets, controls, and trim pieces are being shared, instead of reinvented every season. That cuts costs and stabilizes parts availability for years. Feature changes also lean toward comfort and usability. Better stock seats, more sensible wind management, easier luggage mounts, upgrades that matter on day 10 of a long trip, not just day 1 on a show stand. None of that makes for a viral clip, but it builds loyalty with riders who still chase real miles. A company chasing a rally headline throws half-baked gadgets on limited editions. A company chasing lifetime customers spends its money on the boring pieces you notice only when they fail. Indian's quiet roadmap looks much closer to the second path. They seem willing to be accused of being dull if it means their bikes keep earning trust deep into the odometer. That approach does not crush a rival overnight. It grinds them down over seasons, as riders compare repair bills, comfort, and dealer support. While one brand screams for attention on Main Street, another brand quietly makes itself easier to live with. In that light, the so-called Sturgis Snub starts to look less like a mistake and more like a line in the sand about how they plan to win. Noise to grip. Short-term hype is being swapped for slow, steady traction. Internal spend reports from marketing teams show money pulled away from big national spectacles and pushed into regional dealer programs. Instead of paying for one huge weekend of noise in the Black Hills, Indian is funding a year of smaller, targeted moves. Regional ad budgets have shifted toward local television, radio, and long-term sponsorships of riding events that actually move metal. Dealer co-op funds are tied less to banners at rallies and more to hosting ride days, tech nights, and comfort clinics. Those actions do not earn a dramatic headline, but they build something more important: familiarity and trust with the riders who really buy heavyweight machines. Slow traction changes what normal looks like in the market. When riders in one region see the same brand quietly show up at every poker run, charity ride, and dealer event, that brand stops feeling like an outsider. It becomes the default second option, then the first. Once that reference point shifts, the old leader has to work harder just to feel relevant. Rally stunts burn hot, then disappear. Repeated local contact stays in a rider's head when it is actually time to trade in. That is where the money gets made. Indian seems willing to let others win the applause, while they win the calendar. To see whether this trade pays off, follow the people holding the risk. Margin shield. Dealers live and die by gross margin, not by logos on a rally banner. Recent conversations with dealer managers describe new allocation rules and warranty provisioning that lean in one clear direction: protect the store before the spectacle. Rather than dumping a wave of units against one event window, Indian is tying allocations to realistic sell-through targets. That keeps floor plan interest from eating dealers alive. Warranty budgeting has also shifted. Managers report that more dollars are set aside on the front end for long coverage on core touring rigs. That decision calms nervous owners and gives sales staff a stronger close. It also shows dealers that the factory expects to stand behind its machines instead of ducking when something small goes wrong. A store that trusts its warranty support is far more likely to stay loyal when times get tight. Protecting dealer margins does one more thing: it stabilizes the network. When stores are not forced to chase every hype cycle, they can invest in better staff, better tools, and better showrooms. Riders feel that difference long after a rally ends. Deals are quieter, more honest, and less desperate. You spend less time fighting about add-ons and more time talking about real miles. A company that chooses dealer health over one big moment sends a message. They plan to be around for the long haul and want their partners alive to sell those bikes. If rallies are not driving demand, another engine has to carry the load. Demo engine. The new engine is not a flashy stage. It is a long row of demo days and dealer-led rides. Regional calendars show a clear pattern: Fewer huge national pushes, many more small, focused events tied directly to test rides. Instead of throwing cash at billboards, Indian is buying fuel, food, and staff time for riders who actually show up and put miles on the machines. Seasoned touring riders do not buy from posters. They buy from seats, bars, and windshields. A half hour on a properly set up tour tells them more than a whole week of marketing noise. Dealers know this. That is why many are hosting comfort events, suspension workshops, and local group rides that start and finish at their doors. Every mile from those rides turns into a real sales conversation, not just a passing glance. Hands-on demos also let Indian showcase the details that do not translate on a giant screen. How a clutch feels in traffic, how the bike tracks on a rough two-lane, how the seat and pegs treat aging hips and knees after 20 minutes. Those are real purchase triggers for the older riders who still make up the backbone of heavyweight touring. By building demand one ride at a time, Indian is trading instant noise for slower, deeper conviction. Riders who buy that way rarely switch brands on a whim. For that approach to work, the machines themselves have to match the promise. Longhaul metal. Indian's product choices back up the quiet strategy. Internal planning points toward more parts, commonality, and fewer gimmicks. Frames, brackets, and hardware are being standardized across models so that dealers can stock fewer part numbers and still keep riders rolling. Shared components cut costs and mean the odds of a part being on a shelf when a bike breaks go way up. Cost projections given to some dealer groups highlight lower expected ownership costs over 5 and 10-year horizons. Rather than chasing the latest fad gadget, the focus is on seat comfort, real wind protection, useful storage, and service-friendly layouts. Those are the choices that matter when a machine becomes your main long-distance partner, not just a weekend toy for Main Street. By putting money into durability and everyday use instead of show tricks, Indian is betting that riders will reward practical strength over temporary shine. That kind of quiet momentum is easy to miss if you stare only at rallies, but over time it can tilt the whole market. Market ripples. When Indian stepped back from Sturgis, the rest of the industry watched closely. Some rivals rushed to fill the gap with louder shows, bigger tents, and splashy build reveals. Their event calendars ballooned with rally appearances and sponsored concerts. They doubled down on spectacle, hoping more noise would keep attention from drifting. To them, the answer to silence was volume. Others took a different lesson. A couple of mid-sized manufacturers quietly trimmed their own rally presence the following season. Marketing spend shifted from giant national stages toward dealer events and regional sponsorships. Their public statements never mentioned Indian, but the timing lined up. Those firms began acting more like patient imitators than loud competitors. They saw that copying steady momentum felt safer than inventing a new circus every year. Industry insiders talk about anchor brands that set the rhythm of a market. For decades, one name played that role in American heavy touring. When a second brand chooses calm, the anchor's job gets harder. Spectacle followers have to scream even louder to feel like leaders. The patient imitators just watch where riders drift and quietly move in behind. That change raises a bigger question. How does all of this show up when you go to sell your bike? If you value straight talk on where the big touring brands are really headed, hit like, subscribe so you do not miss the next breakdown. And tell me in the comments what you are seeing at your local dealers today. Resale verdict. Resale value does not care about how loud a rally booth was. It cares about how a machine ages. Early numbers from auction houses and dealer trade sheets tell a consistent story. Models that received quiet, steady updates on comfort and reliability are holding value better than those built around one flashy feature year. Two different used market case studies, one from the Midwest and one from the Southeast, show Indian touring rigs keeping more of their original sticker compared to some rival models of the same age and mileage. The reason is simple. Riders shopping used rely on reputation, not smoke machines. When word spreads that a certain year is solid, with few recalls and reasonable service costs, that year sells quicker and closer to asking. When another model is remembered mainly for a paint scheme or a rally promotion, buyers start asking tough questions about what sits underneath the shine. Steady product improvement builds a backbone of trust over time. Little fixes to heat management, seat comfort, charging output, and hardware durability do not make headlines. They do show up in owner forums and parking lot conversations. Those small improvements add together into a story of a platform you can live with for a decade instead of a brief fling. Once resale patterns start tilting in favor of the quiet builders, you will see behavior shift on the showroom floor itself. Showroom signals. Walk into a dealership and ignore the posters for a minute. Watch what the staff does. Dealers that feel good about a brand stock more demo units and keep them ready to ride, not buried in storage. Over the last year, more stores have added Indian touring rigs to their permanent demo fleets, not just as seasonal one-offs. Service managers are sending techs to specific training on those models, making sure someone in the back of the shop actually knows the machines inside out. Sales staff who trust the product stand differently. They offer longer test rides without hesitation. They talk about real owner stories, not just brochure lines. You hear phrases like, "We see very few of these back for major work," instead of nervous jokes about early issues. Those cues tell you where the internal confidence sits before any official announcement ever lands in your feed. On the flip side, when a brand leans too hard on spectacle, you sometimes see the cracks in dealer posture. Demos are scarce. Staff shift the conversation toward limited colors and show packages instead of long-term comfort and upkeep. Training feels thin. Everyone seems to be selling the sizzle because they are not fully sure about the stake. From there, the story moves beyond the floor and into how brands talk to owners after the sale. Loyalty earned. True loyalty is not built in a weekend. It is built in years of ownership. More brands, Indian included, are adjusting their messaging around that idea. Customer email campaigns, dealer newsletters, and official channels are telling stories about long trips, high-mileage bikes, and riders keeping machines for a decade or more. Instead of bragging only about new color schemes or limited editions, they highlight service intervals, long warranty support, and rider communities built around real distance. Customer retention numbers from dealer groups reflect the payoff, where ownership-focused messaging and support programs are strong. Riders are more likely to return to the same badge for their next machine. They feel seen as long-term partners instead of one-time buyers. Stories about 200,000-mile engines and cross-country tours do more to hold that bond than any burnout show on Main Street. For older riders who have watched trends come and go, this kind of talk rings true. They know rallies are fun, but they also know most of motorcycling happens far away from the big tents. A bike that lets you knock out a 1,000-mile weekend without drama earns more respect than a bike everyone photographed for 2 days and forgot. Once that shift takes hold, the broader industry momentum begins to change direction in ways that are hard to reverse. Calm kings. For years, riders were told the brand screaming the hardest at rallies would hold the crown. Yet, recent market share shifts inside the heavyweight heritage segment tell another story. Smaller and mid-sized names that leaned on steady product, tight dealer relationships, and low drama have picked up a few points, while the loudest name in the room wrestled with recalls, redesigns, and image fights. Indian fits that quieter pattern. They are not trying to be everything to every rider. They are aiming at the same seasoned touring crowd that once had only one real choice. Those riders value history, sure, but they value stability even more. A company that simply does what it promises year after year ends up looking more traditional than the one constantly reinventing itself to stay in the news. Heritage stops being about slogans and starts being about who actually delivers a solid machine for 10 long seasons. In that environment, a silent Sturgis plays almost like a filter. The casual crowd misses you. The serious, long-distance folks notice who skipped the circus and kept working. When those riders tell younger friends which bike got them across 3 states in comfort, the advice usually points toward the brand that felt calm, not the one that shouted loudest. Stability quietly repaints who looks like the real heir to American touring. And that shift begins. You have to ask where policy and regulations might push it further. Rulebook rewards. Regulators do not care how loud your booth was on Main Street. They care whether your models meet standards on time and without drama. Supplier briefs and internal compliance notes point to one clear fact. Brands with stable, predictable product plans have a much easier time staying ahead of safety, emissions, and sourcing rules. They are not yanking core platforms around every season. They are refining known frames and engines, locking in supplier contracts, and validating changes before bolting them to bikes. That kind of discipline lines up very neatly with how agencies like to see manufacturers behave. Indian's recent pattern suggests they want to live in that safer lane. Compliance timelines appear mapped years ahead for core touring models. Part sourcing is tilted toward fewer suppliers with deeper relationships, rather than chasing the cheapest bidder each year. That does not make for sexy headlines, but it does mean fewer mid-cycle panics when a new rule or tariff hits. Governments reward that reliability with smoother approvals and fewer surprises. For the rule makers and suppliers favor the calm builders. The pressure lands on the people who actually touch your bike. Rider fallout. The real proof of a brand's direction lives in the service bay. Several dealer groups report heavier investment in technician training tied to Indian touring platforms. Rather than sending one token wrench to a single seminar, stores are flying multiple techs to detailed coursework and certification sessions. They are buying specialty tools, diagnostic gear, and stocking deeper bins of common wear parts. That is money spent on your future downtime, not on billboards. Better trained techs make fewer mistakes and chase ghosts less often. A rider who drops off a bike for a sensor issue or a noise in the front end wants a clear answer in a few days, not a shrug and a month of guessing. When mechanics understand the platform and have the parts in hand, they can turn jobs quickly and stand behind the work. That builds more trust than any commercial ever filmed in the Black Hills, with policy, suppliers, and technicians leaning toward the calm strategy. The last group to weigh in is the one that funds the whole show. What the snub really signals for riders and money. From an investor's eye, the Sturgis Snub is not an insult. It is a signal. Pulling away from one giant, expensive event while boosting dealer health, tightening supply lines, and focusing on long-term ownership value is exactly the kind of move you make when you care about steady returns, not quarterly applause. Quiet dealer confidence, smoother supplier cadence, and a roadmap packed with practical upgrades all point in the same direction. Indian is wagering that grown riders and patient capital both prefer a machine that simply works over a brand that constantly waves its arms for attention. For the rider looking at the garage, the lesson is straightforward. If a company is willing to walk away from the biggest spotlight on the calendar, you should ask why. In this case, the answer seems to be that they believe their real advantage lives in miles, not in minutes on a stage. That can mean stronger resale, easier service, and fewer ugly surprises 3 or 5 years down the road. The so-called silent Sturgis Snub, viewed through that lens, looks less like a slight and more like a quiet declaration. Indian appears to be saying they will win on reliability, value, and rider satisfaction while the parade passes by. For riders who care more about the next 10 years than the next 10 minutes, that might be exactly what you want to hear. So, when you see the clips from Sturgis and wonder why Indian went quiet, remember the real story isn't on the stage. It's in the dealer books, the parts bins, and what your bike is worth 10 years from now. I want to hear from you. Would you trust a quieter brand if it meant better miles and better backup? Or does rally presence still matter to you? Drop your stories in the comments, hit like if this helped, and subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown.